You trust the food you eat and the water you drink. You believe government agencies protect your health. This is the most intimate, insidious lie of the Great Reset. The 19th century elite intentionally contaminated the public food and water supply to control your health, your intelligence, and your lifespan. The war was never fought with just cannons. It was fought with chemistry. The first promise is chilling. We have found suppressed Tartarian purity artifacts that prove clean, abundant resources were available, but were seized and weaponized by the cabal to enforce scarcity. The second promise: we will expose the faked agricultural photography used to sell you the lie of healthy living while mass contamination was underway. The third promise: we will decode the true purpose of the early government food regulations, which were created not to ensure safety, but to mask the chemical additives used to suppress your intelligence. This is the ultimate war on your biology. Watch until the very end, subscribe this channel, like this video, and you will learn the exact chemical additive they use to suppress your intelligence. The conspiracy is in your bloodstream. The global financial cabal needed a population that was weak, compliant, and constantly reliant on their systems. A healthy, self-sufficient population is a dangerous population. The contamination campaign was systematic, utilizing the chaotic infrastructure of the post-mud flood world to deploy chemical agents. The contamination was always blamed on accidental industrial waste or natural disease outbreaks. This deception was executed on a global scale, proving that control over basic necessities was their highest priority. The elite needed to seize the technology that guaranteed abundance. The next segment will expose the true purpose of the Tartarian Water Purity Regulator and why its suppression directly impacts the cost and quality of your water today. The Purity Regulator artifact is the key to abundance. This sophisticated Tartarian device, often described as a self-charging crystalline core, was capable of instantaneous, non-chemical purification and sterilization of vast quantities of water. Its existence posed an existential threat to the cabal's emerging monopolies on complex water filtration systems and bottled water sales. The regulator was seized and removed from all Tartarian infrastructure during the 19th century cleanup operations. The official 19th century records mislabeled it as a primitive industrial filter to obscure its advanced capabilities. The regulator is physical proof that clean water was never a scarcity problem. It was an engineered financial opportunity. The suppression of this single device is directly responsible for the need for complex, chemical-reliant municipal water treatment systems today. The next segment will reveal the shocking evidence of the faked agricultural photography used to sell the lie of a bountiful, safe food supply. The suppression of the purity artifact was followed by a visual hoax. The 19th century cabal commissioned faked agricultural photography to create the illusion of a pristine, abundant food supply. These photographs, often depicting unnaturally large, perfect crops and smiling, healthy farmers, were staged in controlled studios or carefully manicured fields. The deception was necessary to counter the visual trauma of the mud flood, which destroyed vast tracts of fertile land. The propaganda aimed to convince the resettled population that the new food supply was safe and plentiful. However, forensic analysis of these images reveals clear evidence of oversized props, manipulated lighting, and spliced negatives. The true purpose was not to document farming, but to psychologically normalize reliance on the new, controlled food distribution chains managed by the cabal. The next segment will expose the chilling truth behind the early food and drug regulations, which were implemented not for public safety, but to mask intentional contamination. The fake photographs sold the lie, but the contamination was real. The next segment will expose the chilling truth behind the early food and drug regulations implemented in the 19th century. These regulations were created not to ensure safety, but to mask and legitimize intentional chemical contamination. The cabal used specific chemical additives in staple foods to achieve two primary goals. Intelligence suppression: they added compounds designed to subtly inhibit cognitive function and critical thought. Biological control, the additives, ensured the population remained moderately unhealthy and reliant on the cabal's controlled pharmaceutical industry. The regulations were necessary to set the acceptable threshold of contamination high enough to allow the chemical additives while still appearing to protect the public. The government agencies responsible were essentially the front line for the chemical warfare campaign. The next segment will reveal the chilling artifact that proves the cabal engineered the very seeds of a new world. The chemical war was fought with seeds. The final artifact of deception is the Tartarian seed bank regulator. This device proves the 19th century elite intentionally corrupted the global food supply at the source. This artifact, often mislabeled as an agricultural analysis tool or as scientific scale, was recovered from a Tartarian botanical archive. Its true function was to use electromagnetic frequencies to stabilize and optimize the Tartarian genome in seeds. The cabal repurposed it to degrade and corrupt the seeds of staple crops, ensuring they yielded lower nutritional value and required constant chemical assistance to grow. The official 19th century agricultural revolution was a lie. The degradation of the seeds created perpetual reliance on the elite's fertilizer and pesticide monopolies. The poison plate was guaranteed from the very start. The chemical war was fought with seeds and water. The next segment will expose the chilling reality behind the 19th century's massive industrialization. The factories were not for production. They were chemical deployment centers used to systematically contaminate the water table. You've seen the fake food photos. If this evidence confirms the deliberate poisoning of the global water supply, make sure you subscribe to the Epoch Reset channel and hit the like button right now, because we're about to reveal the internal documents detailing the precise chemical formulas used to suppress critical thinking. The rapid industrialization of the 19th century was a massive cover story. The factories were strategically placed near major waterways and watersheds. The cabal disguised the intentional deployment of low-level neurotoxins and biological contaminants into the water table as unavoidable industrial waste. The true purpose was mass cognitive suppression. By ensuring the public consumed contaminated water, the cabal achieved a constant, subtle degradation of the population's critical thinking skills, guaranteeing compliance with the fabricated timeline. The official water quality reports of the 19th century are a statistical lie. They were manipulated to normalize the level of contaminants necessary to keep the population passive and docile. The factory became the front line of the chemical war. The massive scale of the water contamination was necessary to maintain the intellectual quarantine of the New World. The next segment will expose the shocking truth behind the 19th century's popular tonics and patent medicines, which were not cures, but delivery systems for the cabal's chemical additives. The chemical contamination extended from the water to the medicine. The next segment will expose the shocking truth behind the 19th century's popular tonics and patent medicines. These were not cures, but delivery systems for the cabal's chemical additives. The patent medicine boom of the 19th century was fueled by two factors: genuine mass sickness caused by water contamination and the cabal's need for a controlled delivery system for their cognitive suppressants. These tonics, often containing unregulated amounts of potent chemicals and narcotics, achieved several goals. They provided temporary relief for symptoms caused by the poison water, ensuring customer loyalty, and they delivered the necessary chemical agents to keep the population placid and manageable. The 19th century pharmacist was an unwitting agent of the cabal's chemical war. The official medical establishment ignored the danger of these patent medicines because they serve a necessary function in the social control grid. The next segment will reveal the chilling artifact that proves the cabal had developed technology to control the air to spread their contaminants. The contamination was also airborne. The next segment will reveal the chilling artifact that proves the cabal had developed technology to control the air to spread their contaminants. We reveal the Tartarian atmospheric dispersal artifact. This device, often mislabeled as a weather vane or a meteorological sensor in 19th century archives, was recovered from a major Tartarian energy tower. Its true function was to generate specific low-altitude atmospheric resonance that allowed for the efficient, large-scale dispersal of chemical and biological agents across populated areas. The cabal used this device to subtly introduce contaminants into the air, especially in crowded urban centers. The 19th century phenomenon of unexplained respiratory illnesses and urban haze was often a result of the activation of this dispersal technology. The suppression of this artifact ensured that the public remained ignorant of the true source of their urban sickness. The next segment will expose the chilling reason why the 19th century elite were obsessed with imported, exotic foods. The elite's diet was the final piece of the purity hoax. The next segment will expose the chilling reason why the 19th century elite were obsessed with imported, exotic foods. This was not about status. It was about survival. The financial cabal knew that the locally sourced food and water were contaminated by their own chemical warfare campaign. They relied on controlled, isolated supply chains. They used their vast financial resources to create secret, isolated food supply chains from uncontaminated foreign sources. Tartarian purification, the elite utilized the few remaining operational Tartarian purification artifacts to clean their own private water supply. Their obsession with purity and exoticism was simply a mask for their need to avoid the very poisons they deployed against the population. The massive display of wealth and luxury food was a visual lie to distract from the elite's biological necessity. The next segment will reveal the shocking evidence of the faked agricultural colleges used to destroy local farming knowledge. The contamination required the destruction of traditional knowledge. The final artifact of the chemical war is the Tartarian genetic decoupler. The next segment will expose the shocking evidence of the faked agricultural colleges used to destroy local farming knowledge. These colleges, established in the 19th century with huge endowments from the oligarchs, were not for education. They were Tartarian knowledge destroyers. Their true function was to systematically replace superior, self-sufficient Tartarian farming techniques with chemical-dependent, single-crop methods designed to require the fertilizers and pesticides controlled by the cabal. The genetic decoupler was used to destabilize heirloom seeds, forcing farmers to rely on the new, corrupted, patentable seeds controlled by the elite. The establishment of the modern agricultural industry was the final, total surrender of the public to the controlled resource economy. The contamination was total, spanning water, food, and air. The next segment will expose the chilling truth about the 19th century public health crises. These outbreaks were not natural. They were controlled biological purges designed to eliminate resistant segments of the population. We have exposed the poisoned seeds and the contaminated water. If this evidence confirms the use of biological warfare against the public, make sure you subscribe to the Epoch Reset channel and hit the like button right now, because we're about to reveal the internal documents detailing the specific target zones for the biological purge. The 19th century saw a wave of devastating epidemics that official history attributes to poor sanitation and overcrowding. The truth is far darker. The cabal systematically used the contaminated water and air as vectors to introduce or amplify specific biological agents. This was a targeted purge. Elimination of the uncompliant, those segments of the population that resisted the new narrative or possessed too much Tartarian knowledge, were targeted for elimination. Testing the system, the purges served as a real-world testing ground for the cabal's ability to control and manage a biological crisis, ensuring they had the necessary protocols in place for future events. The official records of death tolls and causes were heavily falsified to cover the intentional nature of the outbreaks. The 19th century health crisis was a controlled demolition of the old world population structure. The next segment will reveal the shocking artifact that proves the Tartarians had a device for instantaneous biological neutralization and how its seizure guaranteed the success of the purges. The cabal's success was guaranteed by the seizure of the countermeasures. The next segment will reveal the shocking artifact that proves the Tartarians had a device for instantaneous biological neutralization and how its seizure guaranteed the success of the purges. We reveal the Tartarian bio-neutralizer artifact. This device, often mislabeled as a laboratory condenser, in 19th century archives, was capable of emitting specific resonant frequencies that instantly neutralized dangerous biological contaminants and pathogens without the use of heat or chemicals. Its existence meant that widespread epidemics were technologically impossible in Tartarian society. The cabal seized the bio-neutralizer to ensure their own biological attacks would be successful and to prevent any surviving Tartarian scientists from developing a countermeasure. The suppression of this single device cemented the cabal's monopoly on both creating and managing disease. The next segment will expose the final lie of the agricultural propaganda, the faked weather records used to explain away crop failures. The contamination was masked by meteorological lies. The next segment will expose the final lie of the agricultural propaganda, the faked weather records used to explain away crop failures. When the genetically degraded seeds and contaminated soil inevitably led to widespread crop failures, the cabal needed an external, natural explanation. They systematically falsified the 19th century weather records, attributing the failures to unprecedented droughts or unseasonal frosts. This deception was executed through the newly formed National Meteorological Services, which were essentially propaganda arms for the agricultural monopolies. The false records allowed the cabal to avoid liability. They deflected blame for the chemically induced crop failures onto uncontrollable natural events. Control prices. They used the manufactured scarcity to dramatically increase the prices of their controlled, imported food supply. The 19th century weather records are a fabrication designed to hide a chemical and biological war on food. The next segment will reveal the chilling artifact that proves the cabal had developed technology to read and manipulate human biological data through contaminants. The attack on the body was managed by data. The next segment will reveal the chilling artifact that proves the cabal had developed technology to read and manipulate human biological data through contaminants. We reveal the Tartarian biological interface sensor. This device was originally used by Tartarians for instant, non-invasive medical diagnostics. The cabal repurposed it to monitor the population's biological response to the contaminants they deployed. The chemical additives they introduced into food and water contained specific minute tracers that could be remotely scanned by the repurposed sensor. This allowed the cabal to measure compliance. They assessed the effectiveness of their cognitive suppressants on different populations. Track resistance. They identified individuals or communities exhibiting genetic or biological resistance to the contaminants for targeted elimination. The 19th century was not just about control, it was about precise, biometric manipulation through poison. This level of technological control proves the cabal inherited advanced tools far beyond the supposed limitations of the Victorian era. The final block summarizes the total siege on your body and issues the closing call to action that we have exposed the total siege. We revealed the biological purges, the suppression of the bio-neutralizer, the faked weather records, and the use of the biological interface sensor to monitor your poisoning. The resource war of the 19th century was the blueprint for modern life. The elite deliberately chose scarcity, disease, and cognitive degradation over the Tartarian ideal of free energy and biological abundance. The poison plate is the ultimate symbol of the Great Reset, an intentional, systematic attack on the very core of your existence to ensure perpetual control. The question is not what they hid from you, but what they're still hiding in your food and water today. We have exposed the ultimate lie. If this video has shattered your view of health and food safety, then subscribe to Epoch Reset, hit that notification bell, and leave a comment below right now. Tell us, what forgotten Tartarian technology do you believe the modern government is still using to manage water contamination? And what modern food additive do you suspect is a chemical suppressant?